The Red Sox get their man. They cap off the offseason with a bang as workouts continue here in Fort Myers. Everybody buzzing about the reports that Alex Bregman has agreed to terms on a 3-year deal with the Red Sox. Pending a physical, of course. It is not yet official, but as we sit here this morning, it is the news everyone is talking about. Hello and welcome, everybody. It is 3:10 to left, presented by your New England Ford dealers, Tom Caron along with Lou Merloni. And late last night, some of us were getting ready to go to bed, and our phones started blowing up, and we were suddenly really fired up to get back to work today.
I didn't feel like I couldn't sleep all night. I thought it was a joke. I had the same feeling when they traded for Garrett Crochet, but this one to me came out of nowhere. I thought they were almost out of this Bregman situation with teams offering 5-6 years, but it's such a great move on so many levels for this team.
Again, all pending a physical, nothing official yet, but that's usually a formality. Yeah. We have seen physical issues come in, and that can change things. But as we sit here now, the news is that he has agreed to the deal. And if it's a 3-year deal, the waiting game ultimately worked out for the Red Sox.
Yeah,
Craig
really
Breslow played the game of chicken, and he got the guy he wanted for short term.
And they played it right, and that's one of the levels where it's so exciting. It's, they identified a guy, and I know a lot of people are like, just give him 6, get this thing over with. But when you play it right and only get him for 3 years, you're afraid of that 6-year deal, that 5-year deal being his age. But when you get him for 3, you overpay. And again, you've kind of showed your fan base that you're back in the game, which I think is huge, right? You're willing to spend.
It's an eye-popping number.
Yeah.
If it's $40 million a year, and I'm sure some of it's deferred, however it plays out, it's an eye-popping amount of money per year for a guy who will turn 31 next month. But if you're the Boston Red Sox and you're one piece away, that's what you do. You overpay.
You got to identify a guy and go get him. And the other side of it, too, is I really think Bregman wanted to be here. And I know, listen, it's $40 million, so you have to talk him into it too much, right? It's a lot of cash. But when you turn down 6 years, as reported, 170 from Detroit, the Cubs were involved, Toronto. Going back to Houston would have been so easy for this guy. And it did sort of feel like he was waiting for the Red Sox to up an offer because this is really where he wanted to be.
Because it makes the most sense. Yeah. He helps them defensively. We'll get into that. He helps them with leadership. We'll get into that. And he's got right-handed pull power that should play at Fenway Park.
So he goes from Minute Maid, which is right-handed pull side, to Fenway Park. And by the way, he's got a relationship with the manager, so that helps as well.
All right, plenty to talk about here, but let's hear what the players were saying this morning because everybody was buzzing with reaction. We caught up with some of the players, including Abraham Toro, who is here on a non-roster invitee tryout and became a major leaguer with the Houston Astros. Came up in the system and played with Alex Bregman in Houston.
First of all, he's just a great leader, and I don't think nobody likes baseball more than that guy. He's always thinking about baseball and always talking about hitting, and he's a good guy to have around.
Is he the kind of guy, especially when you were a young guy coming up through the system, did you talk to him a lot? Was he the kind of guy that young players could learn from?
Well, I first talked to him when I got to the big leagues, and right away, I was his locker mate, and he would see me sometimes at video, and without me asking, he would try to talk about the pitcher and strategy. So he's always thinking about baseball.
The front office has the same goal that we as the players have, to make it in the playoffs and make it deep.
Did you reach out to him at all?
Yeah, I texted him right when it went through last night. Just couldn't be more fired up to have him join us here.
What makes him such a good baseman?
I think that you look at the intangibles and he carries them all. I've heard a lot of good stuff about him, just about him being an absolute baseball rat. It's a guy that loves the game, works hard, and obviously his pedigree speaks for itself. Won a couple World Series, and the Gold Glove last year shows he's still at the top of his game.
We were at Fenway Fest, and we were out there on stage, and fans had signs saying, make him an offer, bring Bregman. The fans are pretty fired up. Is it sort of the same feeling here with his teammates?
Yeah, I just got here. I spoke to Bradford, and I spoke to you guys, but as far as I know, what I was just telling Bradford, the goals are the same. Maybe the expectations change a little bit, but we couldn't be more fired up to have him join us here.
For you to be part of a group that's coming here to try to get this team to the top, how does that feel?
Yeah, it's exciting. Like I said, right when the trade went through, this is one of the best divisions in baseball, and you gotta have a solid team to be able to tread water. And I think that we're doing more than treading now with this acquisition.
For you on the mound as a pitcher, knowing you have a solid defensive player behind you, wherever he ends up playing, how just more comforting is that to have a guy like him?
Yeah, it's very comforting. I think that the defense was pretty solid as it stood, but when you add a Gold Glover to the mix, it's very encouraging.
You know him at all?
No, I've never met him. I reached out to him just because I had his number, but never met him in person.
All right, so that was Garrett Crochet, a guy who's going to benefit from a Gold Glove caliber player. But let's go back to what Abraham Toro said. When he was a young player coming up, some of the things he learned from Alex Bregman, those are the things we've been talking about the last couple months, what Bregman can bring to a young team.
Yeah, and we've been harping on that too, right? The adult in the room. And I know, even at FanFest, we were talking about Sam Kennedy, and it was like, don't disregard what Rafael Devers or Trevor Story brings. Well, the reality is, I don't know if Devers is that guy. You know what I mean? That just sits around and talks hitting it. And I think Story is, but he hasn't really been around the last couple of years. And what you've done is you've added a guy now that sits around with all these young players, even in camp here with some of the big three, you call them. And he's just asked questions. Why do you do this? What are you thinking about? This pitcher here, what do you think he's going to do? Those conversations are huge. Yes, you have hitting coaches, but it's so much better when it comes from a peer. And that's exactly what Alex Bregman brings.
As Dwight Evans walks by, speaking of legends, there's Dwight Evans reporting for camp. He's ready to go.
Should be in the Hall of Fame.
Should be in the Hall of Fame, 100%. We will keep saying that until it happens. The defense plays.
Yeah.
I mean, you could talk hitting all you want with everybody, but we've talked so much. This team led all of Major League Baseball in unearned runs last year. You've improved the pitching, but you've got to improve the defense behind that pitching, and Bregman, wherever he plays, will do that.
Yeah, and still a lot does rely on Story. All right, being that anchor at shortstop. But whether, again, we'll get into discussion of where he's going to play, whether it's second, whether it's third. You know what he brings at third. Second base, I'm not worried about him. Everybody's sort of panicking. This is a guy that moved to third base because of Correa and Altuve. He was a shortstop at LSU. He was a shortstop even at the highest level of AAA. It's just it wasn't a fit at the big league team. So he brings you that steady defense. And a guy late in the game, it's not going to panic, of course, the pedigree championship.
Well, it's good news for the pitching staff, no doubt about it. The Red Sox have gone out and improved that pitching staff in the offseason. You heard from Garrett Crochet. He's the stud, the 25-year-old at the top of it all. But Walker Buehler is a guy who is here after a championship run with the Dodgers. He certainly knows Bregman. In fact, they co-own a racehorse together. Here's what Buehler had to say about the reported addition.
Obviously, he struggled a little bit in the first half last year, and I talked to him, and he was like, I just got to be me again and kind of get back to what he had always kind of felt. But, ever since I've seen him play, he's been one of the better players on the field, starting at LSU as a freshman. So, he's continued that over, and very confident player, a guy I think will handle Boston well, hopefully, and has played really well at Fenway. So, I'm excited about it.
Walker, the numbers on the field speak for themselves, but people talk about his intensity and his baseball IQ and everything he brings to the clubhouse. What can that do for this team?
I think every guy that we've added this year has some level of that. I think obviously he's got the championship pedigree and a lot of success in Houston and even in LSU. So, I think the more you can kind of go through those experiences and play in the playoffs and play in big games, it carries over. And I think both of us over the past 6, 7, 8 years have kind of gotten to experience that and are looking forward to doing that here.
He's an intense dude. He's a competitive dude. Have you seen that side of him?
Not so much, man. I hadn't really played against him that much in Houston, but you see it on TV and kind of in the way he carries himself, and I think that's going to be a great thing here.
Not on the horse side. That doesn't come out.
We're having fun with him, man.
Yeah, you hear some of the stories from the Houston side, and it's almost like a Dustin Pedroia-esque obsession with the game. And that, when you bring a player like that to a young team, again, you talked about Story. Story's a veteran. He had everybody there for Story camp. Like, he's done his job as a leader. But that's a different level, right? A guy with that intensity, who's the first guy at the ballpark, who after all these years is still grinding in, who has championships on his resume. That adds a lot.
Yeah, I talked to somebody from Houston and told me a story about the series going into a playoff series a few years back. And he was like, watch what happens. He got jammed 5 or 6 times, broke 6 bats in the series going into the playoffs, knowing advanced scouts would be there, knowing that they would maybe think his bat's slow and you could beat him inside. He went off in the series, like 5 for 9 with 3 home runs, almost setting them up. That's next level stuff, right? Setting up a playoff team. That's stuff that I don't know happens here, recently with this young group. So what he adds is just huge.
The numbers at Fenway Park are staggering.
Yeah.
1240 OPS. It's the highest of anyone with 75 or more plate appearances at Fenway. He is second only to Ted Williams in on-base percentage at Fenway Park for anybody in those categories. But he's going to be 31 next month. The numbers against lefties have trended downwards. The walk rate is still very good, but it's trended downwards. Are there concerns about where he's at, or is this the kind of guy we talked about yesterday when we were talking about Arenado? That left field wall, like what he had in Houston, is going to bring the best out of him.
Yeah, I think there is concern about the left-handed hitting. He hasn't been a great hitter against lefty pitching since 2021. It has kind of gone down. But you mentioned it, the walk rate, it's like Yoshida-like, the strikeout rate. You need more of those guys. Now you've got one, from the right side. So when it comes to Bregman, I just think you bring, I don't know, like just the pedigree and the experience that this guy brings. And it's very similar to Minute Maid. We know that. So he likes to pull side. So I just like what he does for the rest of the lineup as well. He's obviously a great hitter. But the left-handed hitting things, that's something you discuss here. You talk about what is the mindset, what has changed recently. He's still a very good hitter.
He's been a slow starter over time. Last year, he struggled for the first couple of months and then went off.
Well,
his numbers over the last 4 months, he was back to himself.
Yeah, the first 5 weeks, the whole team struggled. Remember everyone saying, is this the year that Houston doesn't make the playoffs? I think it was the first week of May, had 1 home run, 11 RBIs. Well, the last 112 games, he had 25 bombs in the OPS in that same range for Alex Bregman of 850. So it was just a slow month for him, but I think you're going to get more of what we've seen from him in the past.
All right, so what will the lineup look like? That is the question everybody's talking about this morning, and we think he slots in pretty well in the 3-hole. You keep Devers in the 2 spot. He's been very comfortable there.
Yeah, and the rest of it really slides in because, if you put him in 2 spot, now you're talking maybe Story hitting 4th behind Devers in the 3-hole, but Devers loves hitting second. And if you look around the metrics of the game, a lot of the best hitters on teams hit second. Maybe that's where Devers should be, with Duran leading off, Bregman 3rd, Casas 4th. Now Story slides to 5 with Yoshida 6th. So it gets really deep, whether it's Wong, Abreu, whatever order, with Rafael 9th. So it's amazing what one guy does, how it changes a lineup and changes really depth within an organization in case somebody goes down.
They needed to add a right-handed bat.
Yeah.
Right? You lost Tyler O'Neill. And say, well, Tyler O'Neill struck out a lot, but he hit for power. And when he was in the lineup, he gave you that right-handed power threat at Fenway Park. He needed to do something to replace that. This guy was the best available option. We can talk about Arenado all day, but you were going to give up some guys. You're going to have him for 3 years. This was a free agent that you just had to come to a deal where the money matched, and finally they did.
Well, that's the whole thing. You want to take advantage of every opportunity to get better, and you can do that through trades, but you can also do it by just sitting back and spending some cash. You know what I mean? Which is what they did. You don't want to build this great farm system and then trade them all away and 3 years from now be 30th. Not that matters, but you know what I'm saying. Like, just spend the cash, which is exactly what they did here for Alex Bregman, as opposed to maybe, I don't think he would have been a huge return for Arenado, but still, just depleting it by a couple more people.
All right, we're going to hear what that means to the young players, talk about that, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the relationship he has with the manager. Alex Cora was his bench coach in Houston. Their history goes back a long ways, and now the next chapter in that history will happen in a Red Sox uniform. The reports of Alex Bregman coming to Boston broke late last night. Our coverage of the reaction to those reports continues after this. Well, as everyone knows, anyone watching this knows, the Red Sox haven't been to the playoffs in 4 of the last 5 years, 5 of the last 6 years, actually, and it is the longest drought without a world championship now in this ownership's era. So think about that for me, right? Yeah. 6 years. Got to go back to 2018, obviously, last time they won it all. But the goal is to get back to the playoffs. It has been too long. And as we welcome you back, it's 3:10 to left, presented by your New England Ford dealers. Tom, Caron, and Lou Merloni with you. That's what this is about, right? You did a great job. Craig Breslow did a great job replenishing the pitching staff, bolstering the rotation, adding some pieces to the bullpen as well. But it felt like an incomplete offseason. Yeah. You needed that one more piece. Now you start to look at it, and it's been a heck of an offseason for Breslow.
Yeah, it really has. I mean, if you sat there when the season ended and said, we're going to trade for Crochet, right, sign Buehler, with big upside, bringing a guy like lefty like Chapman with the swing and miss, and bringing a guy like Bregman, I think you'd be ecstatic. Now, we're not a very patient group up here in the Northeast. Okay, I understand that. Trust me, because that's all everyone's been talking about. When are they going to just spend? When are they going to go out and just go for a guy and get it? They need a right-handed bat. Well, they did. Now, I still want to get greedy and add to the bullpen because that's just the way I think. But it has been a fantastic offseason. And the way they finish this thing out right now with Bregman walking through the door, hopefully the next couple of days will be beautiful.
As you see coming out to work behind us here, the activities starting to pick up a little bit. This is the agility field and the other diamonds all around us here at the Fenway South Complex. 6 diamonds behind us, JetBlue Park, the stadium where games will begin next Friday, a week from tomorrow, over to our right. There is history with Cora and Bregman. Obviously, they were together in Houston. And Alex Cora came about as close as you can come to publicly lobbying for Alex Bregman this entire offseason. He was pretty consistent that he thought Bregman could be exactly what this team was looking for.
Yeah, he wanted him. You could tell him, even from the reports, that he really wanted maybe those little back and forth with him in the front office. But he knows what he's capable of. He knows just being around the player. A lot of people reference a guy like Dustin Pedroia, right? Just a baseball rat. This is what this guy is. And really, again, it's about maybe like the approach and talking to hitters and having more adults. I think Alex really, the last couple of years, is like, I'm done with this rebuild. You know what I mean? It's time now to go and play in the postseason.
And by the way, when you talk about the adult, you've got this bumper crop, this generational group of prospects coming up. You want veterans in the clubhouse with those guys, showing them how to play the game.
You also want them walking into a winning atmosphere, and that's hopefully what this team is now, competing for a playoff spot, securing a playoff spot. When these kids coming up, knowing what it takes to win. I mean, that stuff is valuable. And again, these next 6 weeks, whether any of these rookies break camp or not, I guarantee they're going to learn something from Alex Bregman down here in camp.
All right, last month we had Fenway Fest at Fenway Park. Remember, the fans had signs, make Bregman an offer.
Yeah.
Like they wanted the guy. And Alex Cora made it clear that Alex Bregman could add a lot if he became a member of the Red Sox. Here's what he said then. Same thing's kind of happening this year, but it's more about offense, right? And Bregman is the name, right? Teoscar Hernandez came off the board, but Bregman's a name that everybody's talking about, not just here. They're talking about him in Detroit. They're talking about him in other places as well, but they're talking about him here. Because even if you've got a history with the guy, what would he do? And I know we're not going to talk about a guy who doesn't have a spot on this team right now, but we all know the guy. We know he's got the winning pedigree. What would an Alex Bregman do for this team?
Well, I can not go into specifics of the free agent, but I think he's a pull hitter that puts the ball in play, and he's a good defender. The intangibles are the intangibles. We all know that. The kid, he's a winner since LSU all the way to the Astros. Obviously we did what we did in 2017, and if you think about it, he put that in the past, right? Like he kind of took that team on his back. This is what we're going to do. We're going to put 2017 on the pass, and we're going to be a good team. And, he's been amazing. He's been amazing.
By the way, great job by our editors. Just one left field home run after another. Just imagine full side home runs here. Where would he play? If you or a guy like that, there's a lot of talk about third base. Is Rafael Devers your third baseman?
Rafael Devers is our third baseman. Alex was a Gold Glover at third base, and we all know that. But in 2017, I had a conversation with him, and he needed to play third because he was Correa and Altuve. I always envisioned Alex as a Gold Glover second baseman. His size, the way he moves. It felt kind of like you will be a second baseman, but he has played third base at a high level, so. We'll see where he ends up, and we'll see where he ends up playing.
Well, we will. We're one step closer to finding out where he will be playing. There's Alex Cora right behind us on the agility field talking to Brian Bayo, getting ready for the full workouts here today. They're coming out after a meeting. I'm sure it was an interesting meeting today. There's a little more step in everybody, a little more pep in everybody's step here this morning. Let's talk about that leadership, because we talk about the adult in the room, and it's not that this team doesn't have leadership. It's that when you compare the pitching staff to the position players, you've got a much more accomplished group of pitchers. Yeah. You have Trevor Story, who, let's face it, Trevor Story's priority right now is to be healthy and get through a season. Yeah. So he's got to focus on himself first and foremost, I guess, as everybody does. Rafael Devers, we know. Rafael Devers wants to be here and hit bombs and be a great hitter. He doesn't want to be a leader. Again, leadership comes with what you do on the field, and he does that well, but he's not a vocal guy. We know that. they needed one more veteran voice in the room, and they got a good one in Bregman.
Yeah, they did. And you know, when you talk about that group, there's no question Trevor Story can be that guy. But as you mentioned, he's got his own things to worry about, right? Like trying to settle in here in Boston and stay healthy. Rob Refschneider's the guy that everybody points to. Right, and it's great that you still have them now, but you're just adding to the room. It's what you heard so much about Justin Turner and how valuable he was to this team a couple years ago with some of these young guys. So bringing that guy in is huge, and it's huge for that clubhouse.
I'd like to see what that conversation is right now as Craig Breslow talking to Alex Cora, introducing some fans. We saw Craig this morning, and we said congratulations. He was like, on what?
Yeah.
I can't say anything about that.
Yeah, I think I actually told him I loved him. I don't know, I might have gone too far, but I was
sure
excited.
You did yesterday.
I'm excited. I wanted to sleep here last night. I wanted to just wake up and be here. This is that excitement.
I thought you'd be in a tent when we got here this morning. I looked for the tent. No doubt about that. So where does he play? That is the question, right? Where do we think he is going to end up playing this year?
I think Khristian Campbell has a lot to say about that. You know, I think it's real easy to put Bregman at second base and leave everything the way it is, with Devers at third for the time being. And again, this is the depth part of it, right? If there's an injury to Devers, he slides to third. If there's an injury to Casas, he slides to third. Maybe Devers tries first base. So there's a depth side of it, but Campbell is a guy that I'm sure they look at and say, listen, if we think he's as good as we think he is, if he shows in camp and we have to start this guy in the big leagues, then you could see that shift right away. I think Campbell plays a huge role in this.
We told you Dwight Evans was here. You see him now. Looks like he could go out there and play right field right now, doesn't he?
Yeah, he sure does. He always looks great. He's fantastic.
Just like you at fantasy camp a few weeks ago.
Yeah, well, sometimes you go down there to feel better about yourself. It's got to be surrounded by people.
It is going to be a different lineup, no doubt about that, a different team. We're going to dig into where the defense goes from here, where they opt to play him, which will have a domino effect on other players as well. And by the way, we talk about Alex Cora. He's going to join us tonight on Red Sox from Fort Myers coming away at 6:30. So not sure if we'll have the official word yet, but as you just heard from Fenway Fest, he's willing to talk about Alex Bregman because he knows what this guy can do.
He's a free agent. We can sort of discuss the possibilities of it, right?
The possibilities.
Yeah,
exactly
we'll figure it out.
Right. We'll get to that. All right, we're going to take a break here and come back with more as we continue. We're going to hear from some of the new pitchers and take a look at the entire offseason now because you can sort of cap it off and say this is what they did, and I'll tell you what, it was a lot better than what a lot of people expected. We're going to roll on. 3:10 to left, presented by your New England Ford dealers. Back after this. Day 2, pitchers and catchers official workouts. Arriving for duty this morning was Brian Bayo. A lot expected of him. Signed the contract last spring training. Craig Breslow coming in, smile on his face. He didn't show it. I mean, he's going to play the poker face. But some pats on the back for Breslow today. No doubt about that. Jaron Duran is here early. First day for the full team is next Monday. That'll be the full workout. But a lot of guys here early getting in their work as the Red Sox get started for the 2025 season. So let's look at this offseason as a whole now. And again, like you said, you can add to the bullpen. You can still, it's always a work in progress.
Yeah.
But as camp really rolls on now and gets started, you can look at this offseason and say you've added Crochet, you've added Buehler, you've added Chapman to the bullpen. You've added Patrick Sandoval, who's injured but will be back later this year, they hope, and is under contract for next year. A good pitcher who's coming from Anaheim. And now you put this guy into this mix, Alex Bregman, as the right-handed bat. You're going to have Giolito and Hendricks and Whitlock all coming back from injury. Yeah. This is a significantly better group of players than we were looking at a year ago.
Yeah, significantly better team, and when you look at the rotation, and it's not, I know we talked to Brez yesterday because it is about the big league staff, but it's also about having 3 big league pitchers down in AAA ready to go as well when the inevitable happens. So, and Liam Hendricks is another key to all of this. The guy was an elite closer with Whitlock. We saw what he can do. He's now locked in the bullpen. But again, I go back to, say, November, and you say, okay, play this thing out. Who do you want? Soto comes to mind. All right, fine. That's not happening. But once he kind of falls through, you sort of look around and say, I'd love to have the mix that they actually brought in, right? Everybody that they brought in, I think you're happy about.
No doubt about that. And at the top of the rotation, it's all about Garrett Crochet and Walker Buehler. We talked a lot about that here yesterday. Garrett Crochet yesterday came out and spoke to the media for a little bit about his first experiences, his first days in camp as a member of the Boston Red Sox. Let's hear what Garrett Crochet had to say.
You know, going back to FanFest, it seemed like there was a good group cohesiveness going on already. You know, I didn't want to come in and be boisterous in any way, so I just kind of felt like I was able to fit in, slide right in. You know, guys were very welcoming from the jump. I had a good group of guys reach out right after the trade went through, so I think we got off on the right foot and, you know, just proceeded accordingly.
What's been the biggest change, you know, joining a new organization for the first time?
You know, getting to know names, that's probably the toughest part. Other than that, you know, just playing ball.
Garrett, obviously last year you had a plan with Chris Getz and Caps and those guys heading into the whole new world of starting. How different does it feel now compared to a year ago?
You know, I feel like I just have a better understanding of what I need to do. Last year I was still trying stuff out from college, trying to add it into my routine because it had been that long since I'd, you know, been in the starting role. But now having a full season under my belt, you know, I feel like I have a great idea of what I need to do each day coming into the ballpark and just, you know, the preparation aspect of things.
What does it mean for the rotation to have a guy like Buehler, just kind of a veteran guy who's been there, done that, obviously won, you know, a couple World Series?
Yeah, it's awesome. Personally speaking, you know, that's a guy that I've looked up to and admired since I was in high school. You know, I followed his career at Vanderbilt and then into the big leagues. So it's really cool to be able to share the locker room with him, you know, watch his bullpens and kind of pick his brain afterwards. That's something that I look forward to doing for the rest of the year.
We talked on your first call and then at Fenway Fest about the extension question. Have you made any progress since then on getting something done?
My understanding of it is, you know, mission one was getting to camp and then, you know, talks would happen or not happen after that. You know, as far as that side of things, I like to leave it to my agent. I just like to come out here and focus on playing ball.
When you look at, you know, your situation and what you've been through in your career, is that long-term security more attractive because of the injury history and the kind of stops and starts and things like that?
There's always, you know, pros and cons to everything. I think that the long-term security is definitely something attractive. You know, as players, we like to look out for our family first. But with last year being my first taste of starting, you know, part of me also wants to see what I could do with the full season of innings workload. You know, obviously I made every start last year. Felt like I was prepared to go the distance in the second half, but was kind of, you know, on a short leash. So, you know, part of me wants to see what I could do in a full season before, I suppose, locking myself into a certain bracket of player.
Is there part of you that wants to see, other than 2 weeks or a fan fest, if this organization will be home, like, and if it feels right to you before, or?
I think that for me, as soon as I was traded to the Red Sox, that I knew that this was a place that I could see myself long term. I think that when you talk about a storied franchise like this one, it's one that any player would be lucky to call home. You know, for whatever duration of time that may be, it's not exactly fully in my hands. But I've been seeing the big picture, you know, as soon as the trade went through.
Other than the bumping up the innings, what kinds of things are you kind of heading into the year kind of trying to work on or improve on from last year?
Yeah, really just fine-tuning things. I'm not exactly trying to overhaul anything, whereas last year I was kind of essentially a one-pitch guy heading into camp, you know, just figured out the cutter once spring training got going. But I was, you know, spending essentially the whole offseason working on my sweeper and changeup. This year, you know, since I added the cutter, it was really just, you know, making sure that continues to be my go-to pitch. I suppose fine-tuning the sinker a little bit, but I don't expect that to be a pitch that I use at a 30% clip. I think that's just going to be kind of a show-me thing. So really it was just continuing to work on my arsenal and just make sure everything's sharp.
How hard was the second half mindset, knowing you're only going 4?
Yeah.
Like, as a starter, is that hard for you, knowing you normally you're trying to go 6, 7? Like, what was that like for you?
It was tough. You know, I was under the impression that All-Star break I'd throw 70 pitches on my first start out and then build back up. So, you know, I was looking forward to that, and then to kind of have the rug pulled out from under me was tough. And I had a couple starts where, you know, I would go 3 strong, give up 2, run into a little bit of trouble in the 4th, and reach 65 pitches and be done. And that's not exactly a way that you want to end a start. You know, it's also just the mindset of, you know, giving up 2 in a 6-inning start is a pretty solid day. Maybe make it 7 innings, but, you know, having that happen in 4, it looks pretty ugly.
You hear the stories about Garrett Crochet being a very confident man, and when you hear him say, let me get a full season without a short leash before we set my value, it tells you that he thinks his best years are ahead of him.
Yeah, that's the tricky part of these extensions. First off, you want to talk long-term extension when you fear that a guy could be in that 35, 40 super upper echelon salary, right? Try to lock him in. You get a little money off. He gets some security, which he did mention is important. Guy, remember, he's had a couple Tommy Johns in his career. He's only really had 1 year of starting pitching. The ceiling is very high. But that security of like a long-term deal, I'm sure he's thinking about that as well. You'd love to lock this guy up, but there's risk on both sides, really, when it comes to that.
Red Sox have taken on some guys coming off injuries, hoping they get their best years, the bounce-back years, right? Hendricks is supposed to be one of those guys this year. Patrick Sandoval is a really interesting signing. This guy was really good with the Angels. He signed on for the next 2 years, working his way back from that internal brace. Not a full Tommy John. They repaired the UCL. I spoke with him today about arriving in Boston and about his experience against Alex Bregman in the AL West.
Yeah, it's awesome. Everyone's been really welcoming, and it's a good vibe around the clubhouse. So I'm excited to be here and be part of this group.
Fenway as a visitor. Have you thought about what it's going to be like to play there as a member of the home team?
Yeah, I don't really know what it's going to be like until I actually do it, but it's a great stadium. I love being there, and I know the fans are crazy, and I can't wait to hear their support.
What's it like to pitch against that? You feed off the energy as a home guy. Do you feed off it as a visitor as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like it kind of raises your level of competition, just having that many people around you, the buzzing in the atmosphere, and it's the passion that they have.
Health-wise, where are you, and how do you feel? I know you don't like to put timetables, but what are you thinking?
Yeah, it's fairly early in my throwing program, but I'm feeling really good, and just taking it day by day.
The news today that Alex Bregman's coming to this team, from the West. What does that do to this team, and what's the reaction?
It definitely boosts this lineup big time, and he's a tough one to face in the box. So I'm glad he's on this team.
For you to be part of a group that's coming here to make this team better, to get it over the top, how does that feel?
Oh, it's an honor. It's a huge honor. It's a big responsibility, but it's a huge honor to be a part of this group.
Does that signal to you, this signing, that Red Sox ownership believes in you guys?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they wouldn't do it if they didn't.
A quiet addition that we haven't talked a lot about because he's not going to be here in April. But if he could be here in the All-Star break or be ready for later in the season, that's another good arm.
Well, we talk about the depth, right, in the organization. You sort of forget about this guy, but the idea is that he will be available, and you can slow play it. Again, August, that could be one of these, and get ready for it. We got a guy like Sandoval at the deadline, coming back in August, but you don't really need him, for the first 4 months. You've got enough depth to get through it, but you can never have enough pitching. So this is a guy to me, the way I look at it when I saw the Buehler deal was kind of Buehler insurance. Like if Walker Buehler is here for only 1 year, Patrick Sandoval replaces him in 2026 in this rotation.
Meanwhile, Houck and Bayo and Cutter Crawford are all becoming more experienced starting pitchers. I think a lot of people thought this was a borderline playoff team before Alex Bregman. I think you're now not only a playoff team, you're a team that could go deep in the playoffs.
Well, you're not so reliant on health as much. You always are, don't get me wrong. But, without Alex Bregman, you said, well, let's see what the kids can be. Let's see if Roman Anthony's going to help. Campbell's going to help. Got to stay healthy at shortstop. Got to stay healthy on the corners. And now all of a sudden with Bregman here, you still have to be healthy. But if there is an injury, it's not all lost, offensively. There's a lot of versatility. Young kids can come up from AAA. Bregman can move around the infield. So I think that's really the area that you feel better about, right? The depth in case something goes wrong.
It's all about Alex Bregman today. The report coming out late last night. Alex Bregman agreeing to terms on a 3-year deal with the Boston Red Sox, opt-outs after each of the season. We've got more from Fort Myers coming up, and don't forget for the latest news on Alex Bregman and why one MLB insider says why Bregman chose the Red Sox. Head over to NESN.com and get the inside scoop. Khristian Campbell getting ready for his work today. It'll be interesting to see how this affects him and how the young guys wind up working their way in. But today is all about Alex Bregman, Lou. And fans are upset they didn't do this a month ago, but the timing is perfect. They got it done where he can come in and have a full camp.
Yeah, just in time, right? Because you don't want to miss camp. We've seen that from guys in the past. This foundation's being built here. You're getting to know your teammates. You're getting to know your coaches. So it's good timing. I think everybody is excited, the fan base. But I'll tell you, the guys in that clubhouse, they're excited too. They're walking into camp feeling good about themselves.
The timing is everything. It's perfect timing. Nesson 360 with a half-price special on the annual plan right now, just in time to welcome Alex Bregman into town. Fans are fired up about it. We'll have more coming your way tonight. It's Red Sox from Fort Myers at 6:30. And look who's going to join us. Alex Cora, manager of the Red Sox, is going to sit down with Lou and me to talk about the upcoming season and maybe unofficially talk about the guy who will be joining the team. We want to say goodbye to everyone watching on Nesson Nation, but for 20 minutes of bonus coverage, stay with us live on Nesson as 310 to left rolls on, presented by your New England Ford dealer.